Hey friends, welcome to Dishing on Divorce. I'm your host, Lisa Lisser, CEO and founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorced relationships and life transitions. My work is designed to help you navigate the known and unknown challenges you will face during divorce, relationships, and life transitions. And my job is to help you launch into your next chapter, the next chapter of your amazing life. Think of me as your guide on the side. Today, I have a great show planned. I'm speaking with 4 incredible divorce coaches whom I met when I trained to be a certified pre-mediation divorce coach. And we're going to talk about that. But before I introduce these coaches, I want you to know that you are watching and listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, the new streaming network, home of radio, podcasts, and TV. And you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Roku TV, and wherever you get your podcasts. So with that, I'd like to bring in my guests, Michelle Hanney, Emily Malloy, Kathleen Burgler, and Alex Kapp. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Exciting.
And hi, Cece. So, ladies, welcome to Dishing on Divorce. And I just want to thank you all for coming today. We really learned a lot and grew as divorce coaches when we trained together to be pre-mediation divorce coaches. But before we start and get into the weeds with what mediation means to the divorce process, I'd love each of you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice so our audience knows who it is that is giving us this story. So I'm going to start with the order that I see you in. So Michelle, can you start and tell a little bit about you and your practice?
Of course. I'm Michelle Hanney. My practice is Divorce Differently. And I embarked on this journey about 10 years ago, unfortunately going through a pretty high conflict divorce where I knew nothing about divorce coaching and was, completely reliant on my attorney and following his path. And it's really that drove me to study and become certified with CDC Divorce Coaching and Transformation. Then I later specialized in doing the high conflict divorce certification program. And then most excitingly, I did the pre-mediation divorce coaching seminar with all of you at the DCA. And it's, everyone says, well, many people say you can't mediate in high conflict. And I'm definitely an example of being able to settle my case through mediation. And in doing the pre-mediation course, it was just so evident that there's so much power and value in the mediated process. So when we all came together, it was just such an eye-opening experience that I think is so valuable for our clients.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Alex.
Hi, so I am Alex Kapp, and I am CDC Certified Divorce Coach, DCA High Conflict Divorce Coach, and now a DCA Pre-Mediation Divorce Coach with all of you. I started out my life in a very different track. I was an actress on television still am, I guess, but for 20 to 30 years, oh my gosh. And in 2014, I got divorced, and it was a pretty big shock to my system and my kids' system. So again, like Michelle, had no idea what a divorce coach was. And years later, my divorce attorney said to me, I think you would be a pretty damn good divorce coach. And I said, that's great. I don't know what that is, but sure. So that's when I found the original training program that I think we all did, CDC. And I, too, understand the power of negotiation. And I think what we all know as women now is that I think we often feel like we don't have any power in our divorce for various reasons, whether we were out of the workforce or we've been home raising children or we were working. Regardless, we have a lot more power than we think we do. And I think for all of us, it's about finding that power over ourselves, not just power over each other, but power over ourselves. So I love what I do, and I love all of you guys. So I can't wait to get started talking to each other. It's fun.
Great. Kathleen.
I'm Kathleen Burgler, and I have been coaching professionally since 2011, but in healthcare. And I loved it. I'm kind of a service-oriented person, really delighted to do that kind of work. But as you may know, healthcare in America kind of sucks, and it became really numbers-driven. And so when I went through my divorce, I was lucky enough to run across a divorce coach who was absolutely critical. And she worked with my ex and me throughout the process. And she said to me at one point, "You would make a great divorce coach." And I put it on the back burner. And then I got burned out in healthcare and made the switch. And there are similarities. There are little pieces that are the same in both, but it's a fulfilling and purposeful work to do.
Incredible, incredible. Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily Malloy, and I started my professional career as a litigator in a corporate law firm in New York City. I became a social worker and then went through my own divorce, and it sounds like a common thread many of us have here. But my ex-husband and I did mediation, and I thought it was the best process and was so pleased and thrilled that I was able to have that opportunity. And what really brought me to becoming a divorce coach was I want to be the professional that I wish I had known about and had while I was going to mediation. And even though it was, I think, a very positive process, I would have really liked to have had someone who could have helped me think about the issues and understand and evaluate my options with the understanding and grounding in what are my values and what were my goals. And I think that could have even helped me more. So that was what brought me to divorce coaching. And I'm excited to talk today with all of you. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. And you're right. We all have several things in common, not the least of which is all of our certifications, but the fact that we've all experienced divorce. And I was a litigator back in the early stages of my professional life. And then I raised my kids, and then I got divorced. And my divorce was really difficult for me. I started with lawyers and mediators, and that didn't work. And then we got different lawyers that were going to be sharks and fight with each other, and that they did. And then we had mediation at the end, but it was the lawyers who were all talking. And we were in a room for 8 hours, and then a room again for another 8 hours until it was hammered out. And I don't think I ever talked during those 8 hours.
Amazing.
And yet we got a deal, and I'm fine. But as I always say, I could have been more fine. Mm-hmm. And so when I discovered there was a field called divorce coaching, I jumped at it because I thought that would have been the person I needed. And it could have saved me years, and it could have saved me heartache. And that's what we all do. And that's why we're here. So one of the things that really drew us together was the thing was this idea of being a pre-mediation divorce coach. So I wanted to ask you, what was it that drew you to that, this idea of mediation and the coaching for mediation? Because I know some of you had personal experience with mediation in your divorces, but also experience as mediators. So what do you think is the thing about mediation that drew you to want to coach people through it? Emily.
Yeah, I do divorce mediation now. It's one of the services I offer. And I notice as a mediator, so many people don't understand that there's a way to prepare for mediation and come in knowing, having a sense of who you are, what you want, how you want to show up in the process, and how you can help yourself throughout the process so that you get to a result that really works for you. And I often see people who come in kind of blind and don't know anything about the law, what the options are. And it's really, if you come in with an expectation that is very different from kind of what the law says, and you don't realize that, that's a hard thing to hear when you're sitting with your spouse in this uncomfortable situation. So that was one of the things that drew me to pre-mediation divorce coaching.
Yeah, that's so true. Anyone else?
I think for me, I didn't go through mediation. I settled my divorce in my living room with my ex-husband in about 15 minutes because my lawyer, who was a wonderful guy, said he gave me my power. And he said, you know this person better than anybody. You have the power to negotiate this way better than I do. So why don't you give it a shot? And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And in some weird way, I think that's sort of what we're all saying, is that we talk about power, which I just mentioned before, but it's like what you were saying just now, Emily, about walking into a room not having any idea what to expect. What I loved about our pre-mediation training and what I loved about all you guys is that I think we all started to recognize, hey, we can learn this process. We can go in and be really prepared and know exactly what to expect by practicing it, by learning some tools, so that any limiting beliefs that we inherited from the end of a bad marriage, most of us at the end of a marriage feel pretty crappy, and there's a reason we're getting out of the marriage, whether it's our choice or the other person's choice or both. So it's a way of almost, like I said, finding this new power that we didn't know we had. And so I find it extraordinarily satisfying to work with clients, even piecemeal, with some of the things we learned, and help them find that power and negotiate on their own behalf.
Yeah.
And I think education is also a really big part of the process. So many clients I work with don't understand the mediation process, and their attorneys may or may not be explaining that to them. And I think it's a shame, because with this kind of coaching, you can really show them the power of mediation, and by showing up with that different mindset and maybe getting a little bit away from this kind of positional thinking and showing up emotionally regulated, there's really a lot of power in doing something creative in mediation. And even if you only work through 4 of the 8 issues that you want to get through, that's already progress. And really avoiding court at all costs and using this as this powerful kind of negotiation room. But it takes a mindset and an understanding of the process, essentially.
Yeah.
I would say everything that everybody just said, and the way that I sometimes describe it when people are saying, well, like, what is it that you do? I say, most people are going into divorce or mediation first time, right? They don't know the language. They don't know the landscape. And that it might paralyze them, or it might make them frantic. And so I say, imagine that you're in you wake up and you're in a pitch black room. You don't know how big it is. You don't know if there is a giant hole in front of you. And so our work as coaches is to turn on the light. Okay.
Great.
Now get your back against the wall, get your breath settled, get centered, get the lay of the land, and let's figure out what are the obstacles between where you are and where you need to get to. And let's figure it out. And let's do it bit by bit. And it might be leaps and bounds, and might be slow going. But it's that, illuminating, which then allows you to have the power.
Yeah, no, I love that. And your metaphors are huge, right? Like, I talk a lot about my clients, they're carrying loads, and then they feel lighter, right? They come in and they're dark, and they're like small, they're crunch, like even on the Zoom screen, I see that they're like this. Yeah. And then after a certain number of sessions, they're coming in like this, and they're more open. Their bodies are different. And when you talk about starting a process that they know nothing about, like mediation, like divorce, that's how you start. And even mediation, which is supposed to be better, right? It's supposed to be better. If you don't know anything about it, if you're uneducated when you start, you're still terrified, even if it's supposed to be better.
Absolutely.
So that's where the coaching comes in, right? The coaching turns on the light. It provides the education that you're afraid to ask for because you don't know who to ask, right? The mediator is supposed to be neutral. So you're afraid to ask the mediator questions. If you hire a lawyer and ask the lawyer, then you're paying the lawyer. So does that even make sense? Like, these are the kinds of questions that will go through your head. I knew that a lot of these questions went through my head. Am I allowed to even ask the questions?
Mm-hmm.
No, I knew like logically, of course, I'm allowed to ask questions, but does it make sense? Aren't I supposed to know certain things that I don't already know? But when you're working with a coach, you give yourself permission to not know something and to ask someone for answers. And
Right.
and the answers that are right for you, because you then get to educate the coach on what are the important things to you.
Mm-hmm.
Not what are the important things to the client whose case I settled last week. Because that also happens in cases you go to a lawyer and the lawyer says, well, I can get you X, Y, and Z. And you're like, okay, I guess that's what I want, X, Y, and Z. But maybe what you actually need are Q, W, and S. But
Right.
you don't know because you don't know anything about divorce.
Right.
So that's what the coaching does in the pre-mediation.
It's demystifying, right?
Yeah.
It's because, the lay person, the, regular, plain Jane walking around has no idea. We don't know what our rights are, so to speak. Like, and just like you were saying, is it okay to ask a question? I think sometimes people kind of feel like they go in and the process happens to them, and they aren't necessarily part of it, and they don't feel like they have any place. Like, is it okay to vet the mediator that the attorney said I have to use? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's that empowerment. Exactly. That I tell my clients, this is your divorce. And that was my lesson learned, because I let my attorney drive my divorce. And every time I'm saying, this is your chance to show up. It's your divorce. We can work on strategy and communication and on our emotional regulation, but this is a forum almost. This is your room to work things out. So it's very powerful. And at the end of the day, if you can't work it out, you've learned so much about your future ex's position and strategy and their mindset. And it's just, obviously that's not ideal, but you want to use that forum as productively as you can. Yeah.
I think there's also a piece of this that I've been thinking about a lot lately with clients, because a lot of what we do is practice with our clients. So, we don't always rehearse everything out and role play, but sometimes we do a little bit, because so much of our nervousness is like you guys have just talked about, not understanding the process. All we know about divorce is what we've seen on TV. Like for me as a kid, it was The Love Boat. It just seemed like it was so easy. Like, if you're married, you're divorced, and everything's great. But I think a lot of this, I keep thinking of this from my acting head, but this is a lot of, sometimes we have to put on a hat and perform a little bit. And that might mean, like what somebody just mentioned, emotional regulation, not engaging in conflict while you're sitting there in the room. You have to kind of pretend you're great and you're strong and you're powerful. Sometimes you have to fake it a little bit that you care more about something than you do, because you're really trying to negotiate what you want based on your core values. So there's some strategy involved. It's not necessarily manipulative. You're not trying to mess anybody else up. You're just trying to get to the post-divorce phase where it's not just the piece of paper. It's, how do you want to live the rest of your life? How much do you want this divorce to continually be part of your life after you've signed the paperwork? So you get to a little bit craft what that looks like through discovery of what is important to you in the mediation process.
Right.
And I would just say also that is about shifting the dynamic, right? So there's been those patterns and dynamics that have led the people to be divorcing in the first place. And then when you're just working with the one client and you're enabling them, you're offering them to this space and the clarity so that they can go, oh, actually, this is where I want to go. This is what's important to me. This is kind of my driver here. And they can start to switch it. That's going to disrupt those old patterns with the two of them, which can lead to a nice, smoother mediation and better outcomes.
Absolutely. So this is a great moment for us to take a little break. We're at about halftime. So now we will hear from our sponsor. And we're back. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into a couple of things that came up when we were talking before. One is power, and one is the process. So Alex, you brought up power and power over and power of ourselves. And Michelle, you talked about whether high conflict can be part of mediation, and this idea that if you're in a high conflict divorce, you can't really resolve in a mediation because one party has power over the other party. And the questions that arise are often about, how do I exert my power in a way that is in concert with the process and exhibit my power so that the other party no longer believes that they have power over. How do I, so that we reach an equilibrium? And that's an interesting dynamic because it does shift, right? Like when you have that shift of the dance that you've been doing and the pattern is changing, the power over has to settle into something different. So have you seen that in any of your cases where there's been a real shift so that power over becomes power together?
I mean, I've seen it on a one-sided basis where there's power and one side is intimidated, and it's I think once the intimidated side is learning the process and showing up emotionally regulated and calmer and communicating and feeling like they are adding value to the process, that the other side is, it's almost, whoa, what's going on? Everybody starts listening just a little bit more. When you're showing up, not in this vindictive, kind of angry, revengeful, again, like I said earlier, positional thinking that is so negative to any sort of, dispute resolution process.
But I think that the positional thinking is really one of the key takeaways that we all got from our training, right? That we coach our clients to identify what are the interests underneath the positions. Right? Yes. What are the interests? And where are you in concert on the interests so that you don't come in with your position? Because when you come in with your position, there's no place to move.
Right.
No.
And a great example, it's just for everybody listening, would be, the position is, I'm the mother of 3 children. My kids grew up in this house and I demand I will keep this house at all costs. That's the position. Right. When we work with clients, the question is, okay, tell me a little bit more about why that's your position. What's important to you about keeping the house? What can you afford to keep the house? How do you propose? Do you want to buy him out? Do you want to, refinance? You're working through the realities of what keeping the house looks like. And a lot of times, I would say for me with my clients, probably 75% of the time, people will their position will change because what they realize is, wait a minute, I can't buy them out. I don't want to. And actually, secretly, I was ready to downsize anyway, or my kids are going to college, or, it's too much responsibility. And suddenly you go, wait, okay. So that's something you don't have to hold on so tight to, because now you can work with your ex, your soon to be ex, on what is important to you rather than what you want physically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think one of the best way illustrations of something similar recently is, and this happens all the time, is you have stay-at-home mom who says, I'm powerless. I didn't even keep the books. I got an allowance and I bought the things and I took care of the kids and kept the home. I have nothing. I'm completely powerless. And to do the things and allow this space for them to go, oh, wait. Yeah, I do have some power. Their own shifts, their own stepping into that light, stepping with stronger sense of self and centeredness, then that's what disrupts the balance. We might not be affecting anything going on with that soon to be ex, but because now we've got mom going, wait a second, my work's what you get. You know, such a cool shift.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is a cool shift when you see their self-image change, right? If you see someone go from thinking all I can do is X to, oh my gosh, I really can do X plus Y plus Z plus Q. I'm not limited. My
Empowering.
opportunities are really unlimited.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And about the house, I think that historically, the story we tell about divorce is that the person that gets the house wins.
Mm.
I agree.
And that's like the story.
Breaking that narrative.
You
Yeah.
know, and so I know that in my case there was something about that, and in my case I wound up getting the house, but only with such conditions that I actually couldn't keep it. So within 6 months I had sold the house and had to leave, and it was really disappointing, but it was actually the best thing for me because I now had a new space that was not associated with my spouse. And it was the best thing for my relationship with my ex because he didn't resent me anymore because of the house. Like our relationship changed 100% once I no longer had the house.
Yeah.
And that was not something I expected. So, you know, that's when I talk to people about the house, I just have that always in mind.
Well, and you just said that's something you hadn't expected.
Yeah.
Expectation is such a huge part of this, or like expectations that I'm going to get screwed. He's going to try to steal the kids from me, or if, you know, and that works both ways. It works for men too. But that we have either our expectations are often not, and somebody said this earlier, not in line with what the realities will be of the process of divorce. So when we can help clients understand, set realistic expectations and say, listen, this is not about winning or losing. This is not a race. This is not him versus you. This is about, again, how do you get to a negotiated agreement you can live with for the rest of your life, not just until you get divorced. So setting expectations is hugely important. And once people have realistic expectations, to me, that's half the battle with the client, because then they go, okay, I'm not expecting to get $6 million from somebody who makes 50 grand a year. I can't, that's not realistic anymore. Or
No.
I'm going to lose I'm going to lose my kids and never see them again. No, that's not going to happen either. So it's such a nice thing when people finally settle into reasonable and realistic expectations. Suddenly a lot of the other stuff falls away. I find a lot of the emotional weight of things is like, okay, at least I know now. That's great.
You're 100% right. And it's that reality testing that we work on as coaches, and their BATNA and their WATNA, you know, like what's their best alternative to negotiated agreement versus their worst, and really finding somewhere in the middle. And you can't do that without, getting away from the positional thinking and really the emotional regulation. You can't even get to it until you
Right.
Yeah, I think it's invaluable to explore, we're talking about exploring interests. It's so invaluable to explore them outside of the mediation process, or when if you're starting, because mediators typically do that. That's part of what we do is we go through, for each person, why is this important to you? And if you're just thinking about it and offering this for the first time in a mediation session, that's so much more challenging. If you've had an opportunity to sit with it and really think about this and have, get your expectations in line with reality. I cannot stress enough what a benefit that is to you and how much better you'll feel and more prepared you'll feel when you're in the mediation process.
Totally.
Yeah.
For sure.
And more heard you'll feel, when you've got it already, you already have a vision of it. Again, it's like turning on the light, like, okay, you're not entering a room blindly, patting the walls, trying to figure out where you are.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. And that is the value of hiring the coach too, right? Like, because also a lot of people are afraid to hire one more professional. Especially because the idea of hiring a coach to help you through the process is relatively new, right? None of us Well, some of us, but I certainly didn't hear about a divorce coach when I was going through my process.
No.
And and part of the role I have now is to explain what I do to encourage people to hire a divorce coach, whether it's me or another divorce coach.
Right.
And I was speaking to Karen Covey, who was one of the first divorce coaches that shifted from being a litigator and then a divorce lawyer to being a divorce coach. She says that what she had to do when she was a litigator was just prove that when she met someone that she was going to be a better litigator than the next person. But now she has to explain what a divorce coach is and why it's important, and then prove that she's better than the next.
Yeah.
So it's like a huge process that has more components. And but when you see the power of it, it's almost a no-brainer. So I wanted to also ask another question, because I like to make this really concrete for our listeners. I was looking at Facebook at some of the divorce question sites, and someone said or asked, they were going through a mediation. They had given the mediator all the documents and what their positions were, and they said the mediator asked them for an opening statement, and they didn't know what that was. And they were like, what is he asking me for? Like, and why would they ask me for that? Do they want me to explain my positions better? And I know what I wrote to the person, and we spent a lot of time talking about it, but I want you to share what in your view is the purpose and the significance of an opening statement in a mediation. So
I'll go. I would say that after, again, I come back to the point of our marriages break down for a reason. We have a pattern of communication. We have resentments. We have doubts, or there's a betrayal. But whatever it is, we're coming into this negotiation with a tremendous amount of baggage, and we're about to negotiate over probably the two most important things in most people's lives, money and children. So we're bringing with it all this baggage. And by planning and preparing an opening statement, you have the opportunity to present an intention that simply states, I am here to put that aside. I'm here in good faith to sit with you and negotiate something that we can agree on. That's it. I'm not going to scream at you. I'm not going to be the wife that you're leaving or that you're divorcing. I'm here to be a grown-up and to set an intention that says, hey, listen, I'm going to try my hardest to get to an agreement. That's it. You're just changing the energy a little bit, and you're taking the heat out of it again. And you're just saying, hey, I'm here in good faith. So let's just see what we can come up with. Hopefully we can stay at the table and come to an agreement.
Exactly what Alex said. I was just thinking, setting the tone.
Same.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my clients, like, you're sharing how you want to show up.
Yeah.
Right. My plan is to show up to do this so that we can leave and know that we still are going to be part of each other's lives. We have children, and that they are people that we share. And so since we know we're going to be part of each other's lives, let's do this in the best faith that we can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I share with my clients. And that's what I shared with that person on Facebook. And no one else had answers like that. They were all like, I never heard of such a thing, and blah, blah, blah. But it's really interesting because it was a very specific website that was just, or Facebook group that was just dedicated to questions about divorce. So it shows how much people need this context. You know, they need, like, this is how you set the table. And, you know, maybe you get frustrated because they put the fork and knife on the opposite sides, but for the mediation, you really need to do it so the other person will feel comfortable and welcome.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's
the opening statement. I've called it a power statement. I think it not only works in mediation, also works if you ever do have to appear in court. I think it's, like with all, excuse me, judge, but this allows you just 2-3 lines to really give my intention was to have a happy family, but I'm here to put the interest of the children first, and and it just sets the scene And I think it's very welcomed, and it sometimes takes the high conflict partner, it takes them aback.
Yeah,
It
it's
just
disarming.
puts it
Yeah.
a different level
Yeah.
of
It is disarming.
negotiation.
Again, it's about redesigning the dance steps, right? You're doing a different dance than you had done in the marriage. You know,
I was going to say, I think a lot of people go into this so ready to fight and be defensive and so protective of what they feel like they have to hold on to for dear life. And that they're supposed to have to like this person at the end of the process. And I don't want to be friends with that person. They hurt me and I'm mad at them. You don't have to be friends. You don't have to like each other, but you do want this to be over with at some point. You also don't want to be getting divorced for the next 5 years of your life and put yourself and your children through it. So it's not perfection. You're not seeking like toxic positivity as we talk about. We don't all have to be Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin. I would no more be that than, there's just no possible way. But you do have to get through a negotiation. And we all talk about this. The process is transactional, really, for the most part. If you can think of this person as like a person that you work with maybe, or that you used to work with that you didn't particularly get along with. So you'd be civil, you'd be polite enough. You still want to kind of have a communication that is back and forth. You don't have to be best friends with them, but you do have to show up and sort of in the spirit of collaboration and agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last piece that I just wanted to raise for your voice and also for our audience, statistics show that mediated agreements in divorce are followed more than orders that are ruled on by judges. So if you want your partner to pay the alimony or pay the child support, you're better served if you meet them in mediation.
Well, that goes back to empowerment, doesn't it? If you are walking into it and you feel like you have been given a certain amount of ownership over the process versus the process being, shoved down your throat, then you and hopefully your ex are changing that dynamic, the dance steps, right? They've changed the dance steps and they've come to a different way of movement with each other, which is we all want to feel empowered. We all want to feel like we had a hand in it. But if you got a judge saying, no, this is going to the way it is, that's, just a petri dish for resentment and animosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like being on a diet and, you weren't hungry until you found out you weren't allowed to have chocolate chip cookies. Now you're like,
you don't even like chocolate chip cookies, but suddenly you want to eat them. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're just about at the end. Is there any last minute things you want our audience to know about coaching and mediation? And if not, just let everyone know where they can find you. So why don't we start with Michelle?
Well, I just wanted to say something that I joke about with you. And I said, it's my dream one day that, pre-mediation coaching will be kind of welcome from both sides before you enter in the mediation process. I think we're still a long way from that, but one can dream. And anyways, but you can find me at Divorce Differently. And I'm really grateful for being here today and talk about this process with you.
Thanks so much. Alex?
Well, I guess I'll just say, I think we all were sort of taught when we all went through this program together that, we're all advocating for divorce coaching. We're all on each other's teams. Here are 5 women who are all doing the same profession. And yet we're here because we support each other, because we're trying to spread the word about how much less painful this process can be if you start here. So I think we all absolutely love what we do, and we're so hungry to get everybody to know what we do, because we're like, we can make it better. We can help you make it better. It's not us. It's finding out how you can make it better for yourself. So that's all I want to do is shout out to the world. Like, try Divorce Coach first. Try. And I guess you can find me. My website is Golden Rule Divorce Management or goldenruledivorcecoaching.com.
Great. Kathleen?
Yeah, everything that you guys just said, I'm not one for like mandatory, but I just think that it is such a critical piece, particularly the pre-mediation. I think it could just be a game changer for so many people. And when divorce is the number 2 on the stress index of life events, it has really potentially long-term impact on people. So why not do all the things that can make it smoother, easier, better, more life affirming in the long run, like more empowering to come out going, yeah, all right, I'm good. And as always, I adore talking with you guys. And I do too love that we're kind of in this together. And Lisa, thank you for the opportunity. My website is kathleenburgler.com.
Great. Emily?
Yeah, I thank you, Lisa, and everyone. This was wonderful, and I also really enjoyed talking with you. I don't know that I could say it better than you all have already said it, so I agree. Really setting the tone early can make such a difference in a divorce process. You can reach me at emily@emilymalloymediation.com. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
One last thing I would say for the listeners is that most divorce coaches offer a free intro session. Just like if you're on the fence and you're like, I still don't know what it is, find somebody that you want to talk to, contact one of these amazing people, because it may very well just really change your life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Kathleen. And you can find me at lzlcoaching.com or email me at lisa@lzlcoaching.com. I want to thank all of my guests. This was a great show, and I'm sure to have you on for another episode to go even deeper into how we can launch pre-mediation coaching and divorce coaching in general. You are listening to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network. Thank you for listening. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Roku TV, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next